A grandmother's trip to see her new grandchild turns into a nightmare. She's 72 years old, gentle, and holding a valid first-class ticket. But a gate agent full of arrogance and prejudice sees only a target. She snatches the ticket, rips it in half, and orders her thrown out of the gate area. Humiliated and alone, the grandmother calls her son. She doesn't know her son is a high-powered attorney, and he's about to bring a storm of justice down on this airline that they will never forget. He arrives not just with the police, but with a legal firestorm that will shut down the gate ground the flight and expose the ugly truth for the entire world to see. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport's concourse. E hummed a familiar, monotonous tune. It was a symphony of rolling suitcases, muffled announcements, and the distant roar of jet engines, a sound that was usually a prelude to adventure or a happy reunion. For Mrs. Eleanor Vance, it was the latter. At 72, her steps were measured but steady. Her silver hair coiled neatly in a bun at the nape of her neck. A soft, kind smile graced her lips, a reflection of the joy bubbling within her. She was on her way to San Francisco to meet her first great-grandchild, a baby girl named Rose. In her purse, nestled beside a worn leather wallet and a tin of mints, was a first-class ticket on Global Wings Airlines, a birthday gift from her son Jonathan. He had insisted. "Mum, you've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. It's time you let someone take care of you. I want you to be comfortable." Eleanor had protested, of course. It was her nature. The extravagance felt unnecessary for a 5-hour flight. But Jonathan was as persistent as he was generous, and eventually she had relented. Secretly, thrilled at the prospect of stretching her legs and enjoying a bit of luxury, she clutched her carry-on, a simple but elegant tote bag containing her knitting, a well-loved novel by Toni Morrison, and a small, beautifully wrapped gift for baby Rose. Her larger suitcase had already been checked, filled with more gifts and clothes for her 2-week stay. The gate E14 was bustling. People from all walks of life were gathered, a microcosm of the world itself. Some were typing furiously on laptops. Others were trying to soothe crying children, and many were simply lost in the blue glow of their phones. Eleanor found a vacant seat near the window, offering a polite nod to the young man next to her, who was engrossed in a video game. She settled in her anticipation, a warm flutter in her chest. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to Jonathan. "At the gate, dear. Everything is fine." So excited. "Give my love to Patricia and a big kiss to my sweet Rose." A moment later he replied, "Glad you're there safely, Mom. They can't wait to see you. Call me the moment you land. Love you." Eleanor smiled, tucking her phone away. Jonathan was a good son, a brilliant lawyer, a devoted husband, and a new father who was clearly besotted with his daughter. She had raised him on her own after her husband passed away, when Jonathan was just a boy, working 2 jobs to ensure he never wanted for anything. He had exceeded every dream she ever had for him. Seeing him hold his own child was a reward she cherished more than anything. The pre-boarding announcement crackled over the PA system. "Good afternoon, passengers. We would now like to begin pre-boarding for Global Wings Flight 927 to San Francisco. We invite our passengers requiring special assistance and families with small children to approach the gate at this time." Eleanor waited patiently. Her ticket was for first class, so she knew she wouldn't have to jostle with the main crowd. After a few minutes, another announcement was made. "We are now pleased to invite our first-class passengers, as well as our Platinum and Diamond Medallion members, to begin boarding through the priority lane. Gathering her tote bag, Eleanor stood up and made her way to the blue-carpeted priority lane. The queue was short, just a handful of business travelers in crisp suits. At the head of the line, checking boarding passes, was a gate agent with a severe blonde bob and a name tag that read Karen. Her expression was a permanent mask of impatience, her lips pursed into a thin line as if she had just tasted something sour. When it was Eleanor's turn, she stepped forward and offered the agent her printed boarding pass and her driver's license. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice warm and gentle. Karen Miller barely glanced up. Her crimson-nailed finger tapped impatiently on the counter. She snatched the documents from Eleanor's hand, her eyes scanning the boarding pass with a flicker of something that looked like disdain. She looked from the ticket to Eleanor, then back again. "This can't be right," Karen said flatly, her voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. Eleanor blinked, confused. "I'm sorry. Is there a problem?" "This is a first-class ticket," Karen stated, as if accusing Eleanor of a crime. She held the pass up between her thumb and forefinger, treating it like a piece of garbage. "Yes, it is," Eleanor confirmed, her smile faltering slightly. "My son purchased it for me." Karen let out a short, derisive laugh. "Right. Look, the economy boarding hasn't started yet. You need to go back and wait with the others. This lane is for first-class passengers." Her tone was condescending, each word dripping with dismissal. She was speaking to Eleanor, as one might speak to a child who had wandered into the wrong room. The blood rushed to Eleanor's cheeks. She could feel the stares of the other passengers. Humiliation, hot and sharp, pricked at her. "But I am a first-class passenger," she insisted, trying to keep her voice steady. "My name is right there. Eleanor Vance. That's my ID." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ma'am, we have ways of knowing who buys these tickets. People like you don't just happen to have first-class seats. You probably found this, or it's a mistake in the system. Now please step aside. You are holding up the line for our actual premium customers." The phrase "people like you" hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Eleanor knew exactly what it meant. It was a thinly veiled insult, a coded message steeped in prejudice. In her 72 years, she had faced her share of racism, from the overt and ugly to the subtle and insidious. This was the latter dressed up in corporate authority and a cheap uniform. "There is no mistake," Eleanor said, her voice firmer now. The gentle grandmother was receding, replaced by a woman who had seen too much in her life to be so casually dismissed. "I am Eleanor Vance. That is my ticket, and I belong in this line. Please scan my pass so I can board the plane." For a moment, Karen seemed taken aback by Eleanor's firm tone. But it was only for a moment. Her features hardened, her condescension morphing into outright hostility. "I am the authority at this gate, and I am telling you that you are in the wrong place. Now move, or you will have you removed for causing a disturbance." A man behind Eleanor, a businessman in a grey suit, spoke up. "Just scan her ticket, for God's sake. What's the problem?" Karen shot him a venomous glare. "This does not concern you, sir. I am handling a security issue." A security issue? Eleanor's heart pounded. This was escalating into something terrifying. All she wanted was to see her great-granddaughter. She looked at the agent, her eyes pleading. "Please, just check. My son is a lawyer. He made all the arrangements." The mention of a lawyer seemed to enrage Karen further. It was as if she saw it as a threat to her petty kingdom. "Oh, a lawyer," she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm so scared." She took the boarding pass in both hands, and then, in a move of pure, spiteful malice, she tore it cleanly in half. The ripping sound was sharp and final in the tense silence that had fallen over the gate area. "There," Karen said, tossing the 2 pieces of paper onto the counter. "Your ticket is now invalid. Now get out of my line. You are no longer welcome on this flight." Gasps rippled through the line. The businessman behind Eleanor looked horrified. Eleanor herself stood frozen, staring at the 2 halves of her ticket. It was more than just paper. It was a symbol of her son's love and care, a promise of a joyful reunion. And this woman had destroyed it with a casual, hateful flick of her wrists. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes, a mixture of shock, humiliation, and a deep, aching sadness. You can't do that," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I just did," Karen retorted, a smug smirk playing on her lips. She picked up her microphone. "Paging airport security to gate E14. We have a non-compliant individual causing a disturbance." She looked directly at Eleanor, her eyes cold and triumphant. "Your little trip is over." The world seemed to shrink around Eleanor. The hum of the airport faded into a dull roar in her ears. The faces of the other passengers blurred into a gallery of pity and shock. All she could see were the 2 useless pieces of paper on the counter and the triumphant, ugly smirk on Karen Miller's face. Security. She had called security on her, a 72-year-old woman on her way to meet her great-grandchild. The injustice of it was a physical weight pressing down on her chest and making it hard to breathe. "Ma'am, please step away from the podium." Karen's voice was like ice, hard and sharp. She gestured vaguely to the general seating area, as if shooing away a stray animal. Tears streamed freely down Eleanor's cheeks, now hot trails of humiliation. Her hands trembled as she reached out and gathered the 2 halves of her boarding pass. Her dignity, however, was not as easily torn. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and looked Karen directly in the eye. "You are a cruel woman," she said, her voice low but clear. "And you will regret this." Karen scoffed. "Is that a threat? Security will be here any second. I'd be careful what you say." Eleanor didn't grace her with another word. She turned away from the counter, her movements slow and deliberate, and walked back towards the seats, the stares of the other passengers following her like spotlights. She felt naked, exposed, and utterly powerless. She fumbled in her tote bag for her phone, her fingers clumsy with shock. She needed to call Jonathan. He would know what to do. He always knew what to do. She found a seat in a quieter corner away from the prying eyes at the gate and dialed his number. It rang once, twice, before his familiar, cheerful voice came on the line. "Hey, Mom, you boarding already?" The sound of his voice, so full of love and happy expectation, broke the dam of her composure. A sob escaped her lips. "Jonathan." She managed to choke out the word thick with tears. His tone shifted instantly from cheerful to concerned. "Mom, what's wrong? What happened? Are you okay?" The questions came in a rapid-fire burst. The gate agent," Eleanor stammered, trying to get the words out between sobs. "She wouldn't let me board. She said, people like me don't fly first class. And then she tore up my ticket. She tore it right in half, Jonathan. And she called security on me." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was Eleanor's ragged breathing. When Jonathan finally spoke, his voice was transformed. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold, controlled fury, that was more terrifying than any shouting could ever be. What was her name? Mom. Karen Eleanor whispered. Her name tag said Karen. Okay, Mom. Listen to me very carefully. Jonathan said, his voice precise and calm, the voice he used in a courtroom when he was dismantling an opponent's argument piece by piece. Where are you right now? I'm still at the gate. E14. I'm just sitting in the chairs a little ways away. Good. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone, especially not this Karen or any airline staff. If security approaches you, be polite, but tell them your son is an attorney and he is on his way. Do not let them move you. Do you understand? Yes, Jonathan. I want you to describe her to me. What does she look like? Eleanor took a shaky breath and described the severe blonde bob. The pursed lips, the name tag. Okay. Global Wings Airlines Flight 9227 to SFO Gate E14. He recited the sound of furious typing audible in the background. I'm looking at the flight status now. It's scheduled to depart in 45 minutes. It won't be leaving on time. The statement was not a prediction. It was a promise, a declaration of war. Jonathan, what are you going to do? Please don't make a scene. I just want to go home, Eleanor pleaded, the fight draining out of her. Mom, she humiliated you. She racially profiled you, and then she illegally invalidated a legally purchased ticket and threatened you. This isn't a scene. It's a reckoning. I'm at my office downtown. It's a 20-minute drive without traffic. I'm on my way. I'm also making a few calls. Stay put. I love you. He hung up before she could protest further. Eleanor clutched her phone, her son's cold anger a strange comfort. She felt a flicker of pity for the woman named Karen. She had no idea who she had just provoked. Jonathan was a lion when it came to protecting his family. Back at the podium, Karen Miller was feeling smug. She had dealt with the old woman and put her in her place. She continued scanning the boarding passes of the other first-class passengers, her movements crisp and efficient. The businessman who had spoken up earlier gave her a look of pure disgust as he passed, but she ignored him. She was in control here. She was the gatekeeper. 2 airport police officers. Officer Franklin, a stout middle-aged man with a weary expression, and Officer O'Connell, a younger, more eager-looking recruit, arrived at the gate. We got a call about a disturbance, Franklin asked, his eyes scanning the area. Karen pointed a perfectly manicured finger towards Eleanor. That woman there, she was trying to board with a fraudulent first-class ticket. When I denied her, she became aggressive and started making threats. She refused to leave the gate area. The lies rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. Officer Franklin sighed. It sounded like a typical disgruntled passenger situation. He and O'Connell started walking towards Eleanor. She saw them coming, her heart giving a fearful lurch. She remembered Jonathan's words and took a deep breath, steeling herself. Ma'am Franklin said, his voice gentle but firm. I'm Officer Franklin. We've had a report of a disturbance. We need to ask you to come with us. Eleanor looked up at him, her eyes still red-rimmed, but her expression clear. Officer, my name is Eleanor Vance. I have not caused any disturbance. I was racially profiled and had my valid ticket destroyed by that gate agent. My son is an attorney, and he is on his way here right now. He has advised me not to go anywhere until he arrives. Her calm, articulate response gave the officers pause. She didn't look like someone who caused trouble. She looked like someone's grandmother. Officer Franklin exchanged a look with his partner. She's lying, Karen called out from the podium. her voice shrill. "She's just trying to cause problems to get a payout. Get her out of here before she misses her flight. Oh wait, she doesn't have one anymore." The callousness of the comment settled for Franklin's unease. Something wasn't right here. He decided to wait. "We'll just stand by for a moment, ma'am," he said to Eleanor. He turned to Karen. "Let's not escalate this. We'll wait for her son to arrive." Karen's face flushed with anger. Her authority was being questioned. "This is ridiculous. I need this area cleared. The flight needs to board." But it was too late. The tide was already beginning to turn. Several passengers who had witnessed the initial encounter were now muttering amongst themselves, casting dirty looks at Karen. One young woman, who had been quietly filming the entire exchange on her phone since Karen first tore the ticket, hit the stop button and began uploading the video with a simple caption: "Global Wings agent assaults elderly black woman, tears up her first-class ticket. Hartsfield, Jackson." Meanwhile, 20 miles away, Jonathan Vance was driving like a man possessed. He had his phone on speaker connected to his car's Bluetooth. On the line was Daniel Chen, a partner at his firm who specialized in corporate litigation. "Daniel." "I've got a situation," Jonathan said, his voice dangerously low. "My mother. At the airport, Gate E14 Global Wings. An agent just tore up her first-class ticket and called security on her." What Daniel's voice crackled with disbelief. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that she's a 72-year-old black woman who, according to the agent, couldn't possibly afford a first-class ticket. The agent's name is Karen Miller. I want you to find out everything you can about her. I also want you to draft a notice of impending litigation against Global Wings Airlines. Cite discrimination based on race and age, breach of contract, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. I want it on the desk of their general counsel within the hour. Consider it done, Jonathan." "Are you heading there now? I'll be there in 15 minutes, Jonathan said, weaving through traffic. "And Daniel. Call the station manager for Global Wings at ATL. Tell them that if Flight 927 takes off, before I get there, the lawsuit I file will be for a number so large it'll make their shareholders weep." He ended the call and dialed another number. This one was to a contact he had at a major news network. This wasn't just about justice for his mother anymore. This was about making an example of Karen Miller and Global Wings Airlines. This was going to be very, very public. He was bringing the full weight of his legal and personal power to bear on Gate E14. The storm was coming. The atmosphere at Gate E14 was thick with tension. The final boarding call for Flight 927 had been announced, but a significant number of passengers were still lingering, drawn in by the unfolding drama. They were split into two camps, those who just wanted to get on the plane and be on their way, and those who were watching Karen Eleanor and the two police officers with rapt attention. The video of the incident was already starting to pick up traction online, with shares and angry comments multiplying by the second. Karen Miller was becoming increasingly agitated. Her authority was eroding. The police officers were ignoring her demands to remove Eleanor, and the flight's captain had just called down from the cockpit, wanting to know the reason for the delay. "Just a security issue, Captain," she'd snapped into the radio. "We're handling it." But she wasn't handling it. The situation was slipping from her grasp. Eleanor Vance, meanwhile, sat with a quiet, heart-breaking dignity. She had stopped crying. In her lap, her hands were folded over the two pieces of her ticket and her purse. She prayed Jonathan would arrive soon. Every minute that passed felt like an hour. Then a new figure appeared, striding down the concourse, with a purpose that parted the crowds. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a dark tailored suit that spoke of money and power. His face was a thundercloud of controlled rage. It was Jonathan Vance. He didn't slow down until he was standing directly in front of his mother. He knelt before her, ignoring everyone else around them. He took her hands in his. "Mum, are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft and full of concern. A stark contrast to the fury in his eyes. Eleanor nodded, a fresh wave of tears threatening. "Oh, Jonathan, I'm so glad you're here." "I'm here now. It's going to be okay," he said, squeezing her hands. He stood up and turned his gaze, sweeping over the scene until it landed on Karen Miller, who was watching him with a mixture of apprehension and defiance from behind her podium. Jonathan's eyes were like chips of ice. He walked towards the gate, his polished shoes making no sound on the carpeted floor. Officers Franklin and O'Connell instinctively moved to intercept him. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to," Franklin began. Jonathan held up a hand, never taking his eyes off Karen. "I am Jonathan Vance, and that woman," he said, pointing to his mother, "is my client. She is also my mother. So unless you are arresting me, I suggest you step aside." There was an absolute, unshakable authority in his voice that made both officers pause. He stopped directly in front of the podium, placing his leather briefcase on the counter, with a soft but definitive thud. He was several inches taller than Karen, and he used his height to his full advantage looking down at her. "Are you Karen Miller?" he asked. His voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried a chilling menace. Karen bolstered by the presence of the police, and her uniform puffed out her chest. "I am the gate supervisor." "And who are you?" "I'm the lawyer you're going to be telling your grandchildren about." "Jonathan," said his voice, dropping even lower, "I believe you have committed several crimes this afternoon. Let's start with the destruction of private property." He gestured to the torn ticket his mother was holding. "That boarding pass represents a contract for carriage worth $2,478, which you have illegally rendered void. Then there's the matter of slander, when you repeatedly and loudly accused my mother of fraud in front of numerous witnesses." Karen's face paled slightly. I was following company policy. She was being disruptive. Disruptive Jonathan's laugh was a sharp, humorless bark. My 72-year-old mother, who has never raised her voice in her life, was disruptive. Or was it that you saw a black woman standing in a first-class line, and your prejudiced little mind couldn't compute it? You profiled her, then you humiliated her, and you did it all on camera. As if on cue, the young woman who had been filming stepped forward. "He's right. I filmed the whole thing. She tore up the ticket and called security on this poor lady for no reason." Karen's eyes widened in panic. She looked around, and for the first time she seemed to realize that the crowd was not on her side. The whispers had grown louder, and several people now had their phones out, recording this new confrontation. Just then, a harried-looking man in a Global Wing supervisor's uniform rushed to the gate. "What in the world is going on here? Captain is threatening to return to the gate. I'm Mark Peterson, the station manager." Jonathan turned his attention to him. "Mark Peterson. Good. I was just about to have you paged. My name is Jonathan Vance, counsel for Vance, Covington and Crow. One of my partners, Daniel Chen, should have already contacted your airline's general counsel. As of right now, you can consider Global Wings Airlines officially on notice for a lawsuit that will start in the 8-figure range." Peterson's jaw dropped. 8 figures. What for? For starters, Jonathan said, his voice rising in volume so everyone at the gate could hear, for hiring employees like Ms. Karen Miller here, who feel they have the right to racially profile and humiliate elderly passengers, for empowering her to destroy a valid paid-for travel document, and for the intentional infliction of emotional distress upon my mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. He walked over to his mother, gently took the 2 halves of the ticket from her, and walked back to the counter, placing them in front of Peterson. This was a gift. This was supposed to be a joyous trip for her to meet her first great-grandchild. Instead, your employee turned it into a traumatic and degrading ordeal. So here is what is going to happen now. He paused, commanding the absolute attention of everyone present: the passengers, the police, Peterson, and a now trembling Karen Miller. First, this flight is not going anywhere. I don't care if you have to deplane everyone. This gate is now a crime scene, and these people he gestured to the crowd are all witnesses. Second, Ms. Miller is to be immediately suspended and removed from her position, pending a full investigation, which I will be personally overseeing with your corporate office. Third, you will issue a formal public apology to my mother. Not a press release. A real one. Peterson was stammering completely out of his depth. Mr. Vance, I understand you're upset, but we can't just hold a flight. You can and you will. Jonathan interrupted, his voice like steel. Or the video of your employee assaulting my mother, which I understand is already going viral, will be the least of your problems. The FAA will hear about this. The Department of Transportation will hear about this. Every news outlet in the country will hear about this. I will make it my personal mission to ensure that the name Global Wings becomes synonymous with corporate-sanctioned racism. Is that clear? The station manager looked from Jonathan's stone-cold face to Karen's terrified one, then at the 2 police officers who were now looking at him, waiting for a decision. He saw the phones pointed at him. He knew he was trapped. He swallowed hard. Okay, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He turned to Karen. Karen, step away from the podium. You're relieved of duty. We'll talk in my office. Karen looked as if she'd been slapped. What, Mark? You can't. I was just doing my job. Just go. Karen, Peterson hissed. Defeated Karen Miller unclipped her ID badge and placed it on the counter. As she turned to leave, her eyes met Jonathan's one last time. There was no triumph in his gaze, only a cold, hard finality. Her career was over. She had picked a fight with the wrong grandmother, and now she was facing the full force of the son who loved her. As she walked away, a few passengers broke into spontaneous, quiet applause. Jonathan turned back to Peterson. Now about that apology. And we need to arrange a new flight for my mother. On a different airline. He looked at the departures board. I see there's a Delta flight to San Francisco in 90 minutes. She'll be on that one. In first class, and Global Wings will be paying for it, along with a lifetime of free flights for the trouble. The gate was shut down. The flight was officially indefinitely delayed. Jonathan Vance had kept his promise. He had brought the storm. The immediate aftermath at Gate E14 was a controlled chaos. Mark Peterson, the station manager, was on his phone, speaking in hushed, frantic tones to his superiors at the corporate headquarters. Another gate agent was brought in to handle the increasingly irate passengers of Flight 927, who were now being told to deplane and await further instructions. The news that their flight was grounded because of the incident spread like wildfire, and while some were annoyed, a surprising majority having witnessed the event or seen the video now circulating among them, were supportive. Jonathan led his mother to the private Global Wings lounge, away from the prying eyes and ringing camera phones. He settled her into a plush armchair and got her a cup of tea. Her trembling had subsided, but the deep hurt was still visible in her eyes. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." "Mom," he said, his voice now gentle again, all the legal fury put away for a moment. Eleanor managed a weak smile. "You were wonderful, Jonathan." "Your father would have been so proud. He would have been furious." Jonathan corrected her with a grim smile. "And he would have handled it with a lot more shouting than I did." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The weight of what had just happened was immense. It wasn't just about a torn ticket. It was about the casual cruelty of a world that still in so many ways judged people by the color of their skin. Meanwhile, the video uploaded by the young passenger, a college student named Sophia Jenkins, was exploding online. Titled "Racist Gate Agent, Atlanta Airport." The 2-minute clip was raw and damning. It clearly showed Eleanor's polite request, Karen's condescending refusal, her derisive comments about "people like you," and the shocking moment she ripped the ticket in two. It captured Karen's smug expression and Eleanor's heartbroken face. It was the perfect, infuriating encapsulation of injustice. Within the hour, it had 1 million views. Major news aggregators picked it up. The hashtags #GlobalWings. Shame justice for Eleanor and Fire Karen Miller were trending worldwide on Twitter. The airline's social media pages were being flooded with tens of thousands of angry comments, 1-star reviews, and vows from customers to boycott the airline. GlobalWings. Airlines, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, was caught completely flat-footed. Their PR department, used to dealing with lost luggage complaints and flight delays, was in full-blown panic mode. The initial tone-deaf statement they released: "We are aware of an incident at our Atlanta gate and are looking into the matter. GlobalWings is committed to providing a positive experience for all our customers," was met with a fresh wave of online fury. It was corporate speak for "we're hoping this blows over," and the public wasn't having it. Back in the lounge, Mark Peterson reappeared, his face ashen. He was accompanied by a woman in a sharp suit who introduced herself as Amelia Croft, the airline's regional director of operations, who had apparently driven to the airport at breakneck speed. "Mr. Vance." "Mrs. Vance." Amelia began, her voice strained but professional. "On behalf of GlobalWings Airlines, I want to offer our deepest, most sincere apologies for the absolutely unacceptable treatment you experienced today. There is no excuse for the behavior of our employee." Jonathan just looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Apologies are a start, Miss Croft. But they don't undo the humiliation my mother endured." "I understand," Amelia said quickly. "And we intend to do much more than apologize. Ms. Miller's employment has been terminated effective immediately. We have booked Mrs. Vance on the 6:00 p.m. Delta flight to San Francisco in their Delta One suite. We have also issued a full refund for the original ticket and have wired 500,000 frequent flyer miles to her account. Furthermore, the company would like to offer Mrs. Vance a formal settlement to compensate her for her distress." She slid a folder across the table towards Jonathan. He didn't open it. "A settlement," he said, a dangerous edge to his voice. "You think you can just write a check and make this go away?" "Ms. Croft, your company didn't just have one rogue racist employee. You have a corporate culture that allowed her to feel comfortable enough to act that way. She felt empowered to humiliate a 72-year-old woman in public. That doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from the top. Amelia Croft paled. She was used to dealing with angry customers, but Jonathan Vance was something else entirely. He wasn't just looking for compensation. He was looking for systemic change. "This lawsuit isn't just about my mother anymore," Jonathan continued, his voice resonating with power. "This is for every person of color who has been followed in a store, for every elderly person who has been dismissed and patronized, for every individual who has been made to feel less than because of who they are. You're not just dealing with me, you're dealing with them. And we are not settling quietly." He stood up. "My mother will accept the ticket on the Delta flight. We appreciate that. As for the rest, you will be hearing from my office. We will be demanding a full independent audit of your company's hiring and training practices, mandatory, comprehensive anti-bias training for all employees, and the establishment of a charitable fund endowed by global wings to support civil rights organizations. The financial damages we will be seeking will be punitive. They will be designed to hurt. They will be designed to ensure that you and every other airline think twice before you allow another Karen Miller to disgrace your uniform." He helped his mother to her feet. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my mother has a great-grandchild to meet." He walked Eleanor out of the lounge, leaving Amelia Croft and Mark Peterson standing amidst the wreckage of their company's reputation. They hadn't just lost a customer. They had created an icon of defiance and a legal adversary who would not rest until he had extracted his pound of flesh and then some. The viral storm was just the beginning. The legal hurricane was yet to come. Karen Miller sat in the sterile, windowless HR office, the silence pressing in on her. The station manager, Mark Peterson, had escorted her here after relieving her of duty, his face a mask of cold fury. He had taken her employee ID, her gate keys, and her parking pass. He told her to wait. That had been over an hour ago. Her initial indignation had slowly curdled into a cold, sickening dread. It was supposed to be a simple assertion of her authority. The old woman had looked out of place, an easy target to remind everyone who was in charge. She had done things like this before, subtler things, a snide comment here, an unnecessary baggage check there, and had always gotten away with it. But this time was different. The woman's son, the lawyer with eyes like a shark, had changed everything. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her purse. She finally pulled it out. Hundreds of notifications, messages from friends, family, and numbers she didn't recognize. She opened her social media app and gasped. Her face was everywhere. The video. That girl had actually posted the video. She watched it, her hands shaking. The angle was perfect, capturing every sneer, every condescending word, and the final fatal act of tearing the ticket. The comments were a torrent of pure hatred. "Vile racist. I hope she loses her job and everything else. Someone find out where she lives." Her full name, her city, and even her home address had been posted in the comments section. This was doxing. This was a digital mob, and they were coming for her. The door opened, and Amelia Croft, the regional director, walked in. Her face was grim. She didn't sit down. "Karen, I've just come from speaking with Mr. and Mrs. Vance," she began, her voice devoid of any warmth. "As you can imagine, the company is in a position of extreme liability." "He threatened me," Karen blurted out, desperate. "The old woman was making a scene. Her son came and threatened me." Amelia held up a hand, cutting her off. "Stop. Just stop, Karen. There is a video with over 5 million views now that shows exactly what happened. It shows you instigating, escalating, and ultimately assaulting a passenger and destroying her property. There were dozens of witnesses. The only person who was threatening was you. I was following procedure. There is no procedure in the Global Wings Employee Handbook for racial profiling and public humiliation, Amelia snapped. As of this moment, your employment with Global Wings is terminated for gross misconduct. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. You are to be escorted from airport property immediately. The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Terminated. Fired. After 15 years with the airline. 15 years, she whispered aghast. I gave this company 15 years of my life, and in 15 minutes you managed to cause more damage to our brand than a plane crash would have, Amelia retorted coldly. You have become the face of corporate racism in America. Congratulations. Security will walk you to your car. Two airport security guards, different from the police officers at the gate, entered the room. They didn't speak, just stood by the door, waiting. The message was clear: humiliated and jobless. Karen gathered her purse and allowed herself to be led through the back corridors of the airport, a pariah in the place that had been her kingdom. But her nightmare was just beginning. When she got home to her quiet suburban cul-de-sac, she found two news vans parked on the street outside her house. A reporter immediately rushed towards her as she got out of her car, a microphone thrust in her face. Karen Miller. Is it true you were fired for racially profiling a 72-year-old grandmother? Do you have any comment on the video that's gone viral? Panicked, Karen shoved past the reporter and fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking too much to get the door open. A neighbor peered out from behind her curtains, her face a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Karen finally managed to get inside, slamming and locking the door behind her. She collapsed against it, her body racked with sobs. Over the next few days, her life completely fell apart. Her story was the lead item on national news broadcasts. Talk shows dissected her behavior. Legal experts weighed in on the lawsuit Jonathan Vance had filed, predicting a massive payout. Her face was plastered next to headlines that read, "Gatekeeper of Hate and the Karen who crashed an airline." Her friends stopped calling. The ones who did offered awkward, stilted condolences before quickly ending the conversation. Her sister called, screaming at her for bringing shame upon the family. Her online dating profile was discovered and flooded with abusive messages. She received death threats by email and through the mail. She became a prisoner in her own home, too terrified to go outside. The world she had known, the comfortable life she had built, had been utterly destroyed by one hateful act. This was the karma Eleanor Vance had promised her. It was swift, it was brutal, and it was absolute. She had torn a ticket in half, and in return the world had torn her life to shreds. While Karen Miller's life imploded, Jonathan Vance was orchestrating a masterclass in legal and public relations strategy. He wasn't just suing an airline. He was leveraging the massive public outcry to force genuine institutional change. His firm Vance Covington and Crowe dedicated a team of its sharpest lawyers to the case, which they officially titled Vance v. Global Wings Airlines, Inc. The lawsuit they filed was a work of art, a 50-page document that was as much a legal complaint as it was a public indictment. It detailed not only the events at Gate E14, but also cited a dozen other documented instances of alleged discriminatory behavior by Global Wings staff over the past 5 years, which Jonathan's team had unearthed through preliminary research and anonymous tips that were now pouring in from current and former employees. They were painting a picture of a company with a rotten core where Karen Miller was not an anomaly, but a symptom of a deeper disease. Jonathan himself became a media figure, but he handled it with calculated precision. He agreed to one exclusive prime-time interview, with a respected national news anchor. His mother, Eleanor, sat beside him, not as a victim, but as a figure of quiet grace and strength. Mrs. Vance, the interviewer, asked gently, "What was going through your mind when the agent tore up your ticket?" Eleanor looked directly into the camera, her voice steady. "I was hurt. I was humiliated. I have lived a long time, and I have seen a lot of things. I had hoped that my great-granddaughter would be born into a world where an old woman's dignity was not determined by the color of her skin. The actions of that one employee told me that we still have work to do." When the interviewer turned to Jonathan, he was ready. "This isn't about money," he stated clearly, though the lawsuit was asking for $25 million in punitive damages. "This is about accountability. For years, corporations like Global Wings have gotten away with issuing empty apologies and quietly settling lawsuits. They treat these incidents as a cost of doing business. We want to change that calculus. We want to make it so prohibitively expensive for a company to tolerate racism and discrimination that they have no choice but to root it out from the inside out." His message resonated powerfully with the public. Support for the Vances was overwhelming. Civil rights groups rallied to their cause. The stock price of Global Wings Airlines plummeted by 18% in a single week, wiping out over $1 billion in shareholder value. Major corporate accounts began to cancel their travel contracts with the airline. The boycott was real, and it was hurting them badly. Facing a PR apocalypse and a legal battle they knew they couldn't win, especially with the damning video evidence, the CEO of Global Wings, a man named Richard Sterling, finally buckled. He fired the entire executive team in charge of customer experience and public relations, and he requested a face-to-face meeting with Jonathan and his mother. The meeting took place not at the airline's headquarters, but in the neutral territory of Jonathan's law office. Richard Sterling, a man used to being in command, was humbled. He didn't offer excuses. He offered a complete and total surrender. "Mr. Vance." "Mrs. Vance," he began, "what happened was inexcusable. It was a failure at every level of our organization. I am here today not to negotiate, but to ask you what we need to do to make this right. Not just for you, but for every person who flies with us." Jonathan laid out his terms, the same ones he had outlined to Amelia Croft at the airport, but now with even more detail. He demanded the creation of a new C-suite position, a Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, with real power to implement policy changes. He demanded the company partner with the NAACP and the ACLU to develop a new mandatory multi-day anti-bias and de-escalation training program for every single one of their 80,000 employees, from the baggage handlers to the CEO himself. He demanded a public, transparent report on the diversity of their workforce, from the bottom to the top, to be published annually. And he demanded the establishment of the Eleanor Vance Foundation for Dignified Travel, an independent organization funded with a $10 million endowment from Global Wings, dedicated to advocating for the rights of elderly and minority travelers and providing legal aid to those who face discrimination. Sterling agreed to every single demand. He also agreed to a private settlement for Mrs. Vance that, while the amount was never disclosed, was rumored to be one of the largest of its kind in aviation history. Global Wings Airlines published a full-page apology in every major national newspaper, personally signed by the CEO. It wasn't a corporate statement. It was a heartfelt admission of failure and a public promise to do better. They detailed the specific concrete steps they were taking, naming the Vance Foundation and crediting Eleanor and Jonathan for forcing them to confront their systemic issues. For Eleanor, the victory was bittersweet. She had never wanted the spotlight. But as she watched the news, she knew that her painful experience had become a catalyst for something good. Her humiliation had forced a giant corporation to its knees and compelled it to change. Her great-granddaughter Rose might now grow up in a world that was just a little bit kinder, a little bit more just. And that was a legacy worth fighting for. 6 months later, the hum of the airport was a different kind of music to Eleanor Vance's ears. She was back at Hartsfield-Jackson, standing not at gate E14, but at a Delta gate, ready to fly to San Francisco again. This time, it was for Rose's first birthday. The changes were subtle but visible. The Global Wings check-in counters she passed seemed to be staffed by a more diverse group of employees. The agents seemed more patient, more willing to make eye contact and smile. It wasn't a perfect world, but it was a start. Her name, once whispered in sympathetic tones, was now a symbol of change within the industry. Jonathan stood beside her, holding a small bouquet of her favorite yellow roses. He had insisted on escorting her to the gate himself. Patricia and baby Rose were waiting for them in the Delta Sky Club. "You ready for this, Mom?" he asked gently. Eleanor smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "I am. There's no fear this time, Jonathan. Just joy." As they waited to board, a young woman in a Global Wings uniform approached them hesitantly. She looked to be in her early 20s, and her name tag read Maria. "Excuse me, Mrs. Vance?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm a new employee with the airline. The training we go through now, it's called the Vance Initiative. They showed us the video of what happened to you. They made us talk about it, about bias and respect, and what it really means to serve the public. You changed things for all of us. You made the company better. So thank you." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. She reached out and took the young woman's hand. "Thank you for telling me that, dear. Just be kind. That's all anyone asks." The young agent nodded, tears in her own eyes, and hurried away. Jonathan put his arm around his mother's shoulder. "See, Mom. You did that." When they called for first-class boarding, Eleanor walked down the jet bridge with her head held high. The flight attendant at the door greeted her by name with a warm, welcoming smile. As she settled into her comfortable seat, she looked out the window at the sprawling airport below. She thought of Karen Miller. News reports had said she had sold her house and moved to a different state, unable to find work and escape her notoriety. Eleanor felt a brief pang of something that wasn't quite pity, but a deep sadness for a life consumed by such bitterness. She hoped wherever she was that she had found a way to let the hate go. The plane took off, soaring into the vast blue sky. Eleanor leaned her head back, the humiliation of that day at gate E14. No longer a fresh wound, but a scar that told a story of resilience and unexpected victory. She had faced down ugliness, and with the love of her son had transformed it into a force for good. She was not just a passenger on a flight. She was Eleanor Vance, a grandmother who had, in her own quiet way, helped bend the arc of the moral universe just a little closer to justice. And ahead of her, waiting in San Francisco, was the beautiful, smiling face of her great-granddaughter, a symbol of a future that now seemed just a little bit brighter. The story of Eleanor Vance is a powerful reminder that one person's dignity is worth fighting for, and that standing up to injustice, no matter how daunting, can create ripples of change that travel farther than we can imagine. It's a story of a mother's strength, a son's unwavering love, and the swift, undeniable power of karma. What Karen Miller meant for evil, they turned into an instrument for good, forcing a massive corporation to confront its failings and become better. If this story moved you, if you believe in fighting for what's right and holding people accountable, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories of justice and empowerment. And in the comments below, tell us, have you ever witnessed an injustice and wished you could do something? Let's talk.